Friends, what's up? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. The new Hawas are upon us. Yeah, those new Hawas, they have dropped, and you can pick them up for the low price of $80. And it's not low, that price is not low. Yeah, the Oud store, that's where I bought my bottles. The new Exotic, the new Lava Gold, and this one, Thunder, which is the one that I'm gonna talk to you about here today. So like I said, you can pick this up at the Oud store for 80 bucks. It's great because they get them first, and it's also great because they price gouge you into a living death. Yeah, they suck. But yeah, I'm gonna break this one down for you guys, let you know how it smells, what it smells similar to, and whether or not it's worth it. But before we jump into the fragrance, let's take a quick look at the presentation. First, Le Box. On the front, name of the fragrance, size and concentration, 100 ml eau de parfum. Gotta love that it's named Thunder, but then they actually show the lightning. Oh no, we're singing Imagine Dragons. You have logo up top. On one side, you have the sticker of authentication. On the back, a little bit of information. And then on the bottom, you're gonna find your batch code and your ingredients. And here we have the bottle. It is in that silver mirrored style, which has become very popular here over the past year or so. Absolute fingerprint magnet. You have the name of the fragrance, the flanker, all of that on the front. You have this kind of cracked lightning aesthetic too, which is pretty cool. That also carries over to the back where they put a sticker. You have on top of the cap, the name of the house, the little snake that goes around. On the bottom, it just says Rasasi, and the cap does click into place. Like Frank Reynolds, let's go ahead and get to blasting. Let's check out the atomizer. Nice. Now, before we do the deep dive into the scent, here are some codes. These are also in the description, so you can copy and paste if you would like to do so. You can save additional money at Fragflex. You can use that code for 10% off every single time you shop there. Also have codes for JOMASHOP, Perfume Box, Beauty House, and more. The first question people are gonna wanna know is, what does Hawas Thunder smell similar to? What is it inspired by? Well, it's probably pretty obvious, you know, just based off of this color scheme and everything, but it is MYSLF Absolu. But what are the differences between Hawas Thunder and MYSLF Absolu? And is Hawas Thunder a better buy than Dumont Nitro Elixir, which is also inspired by this right here? Well, first, the opening. If you're familiar with MYSLF Absolu at all, if you own it or have worn it or even smelled it on a tester strip, then you're going to clock right away that Hawas Thunder is in fact inspired by this. It's one of those ones where you can tell immediately. But is it the exact same? No, this is not one of those straight up one-to-one dupes. Off my skin, Thunder actually comes out zingier, a little bit more aggressive off the top. It definitely comes across sharper, and I would say between the two that YSL MYSLF Absolu comes across smoother. Also, the YSL is a little bit sweeter off the top as well. Now, apple is an official note in both of these, but you get more of that apple in MYSLF Absolu compared to Hawas Thunder. And Hawas Thunder has almost a little bit of a soapiness to it when you first spray it on. Now, when I say soapiness, you might think powder, but it's not powdery. It just has this kind of undertone of soapy cleanliness to it, which comes across differently compared to MYSLF Absolu, which leans a little more into that clean orange blossom side of things. So again, we're not talking barbershop vibes, not old school vibes with that soapiness, more just a little bit of like out of the shower type soapiness with Hawas Thunder. The ginger also lands differently here, because that's one of the big things with MYSLF Absolu is that ginger note and how it comes across. So in MYSLF Absolu, the ginger is a little bit sweeter, like I said before, smoother, whereas in Hawas Thunder, it's gonna come across a little bit brisker, a little more aromatic. So you have this almost, you know, light green touch of minerality kind of along the edges in Hawas Thunder that you really don't get in MYSLF Absolu. Now, all this being said, those differences are gonna pop up when you're doing a side-by-side, right? So when you spray this on over here, you spray this on over here, you're just going back and forth. That's where those are gonna pop out. But if you don't have this to do a side-by-side and you spray this on, you're just gonna be like, oh, it smells like MYSLF Absolu. It's not until you start contrasting and comparing at the same time that those differences really become apparent. And I will say also, the way the ginger hits to me is a little bit better integrated in MYSLF Absolu, just the way it comes across. It kind of melds together with everything and gives a little extra depth, whereas with Hawas Thunder, you kind of pick it out amongst all the other things going on in the opening. You also get this sort of ambroxany push from Hawas Thunder underneath everything right away, which helps give it a little bit more of that aggressive opening that I mentioned before. Yeah, these two side by side, when you first spray them on, same amount of sprays. The Hawas is louder, which probably not a big surprise because most Hawas fragrances, not all of them, but most of them, are pretty strong. They've been eating clean, they've been trending hard, and they project, they push. That's what Hawas does for the most part. And side by side, this does have a louder opening than MYSLF Absolu does. So if you just want to really simplify that opening, you know, just kind of dumb it down. What are the most simple things to look out for between these two when you first spray them on? Less sweetness off the top with Hawas Thunder, more aromatic, more soapy with Hawas Thunder, sweeter, smoother with MYSLF Absolu. A little bit more refined, but not as heavy hitting as the Rasasi. So that's the open. What about the mid? As Hawas Thunder dries down on your skin, it actually starts to get a little sweetness that comes in. It doesn't maybe pull fully into the same amount as MYSLF Absolu has going on, but it has more than in the opening. Now, to be clear, when I say that, it's not that MYSLF Absolu is a sweet fragrance, right? Like compared to most things out there, it's really not. It's just when you're doing that side by side, you can tell initially that this has a little more sweetness to it. And then as they dry, kind of come in closer. Now, at this same time, Hawas Thunder is still hanging out in that clean territory, a little bit of that shower gel-esque vibe to it. And sure, it's still not quite as smooth as MYSLF Absolu, but I'll tell you what, in the air, these both smell awesome. Which I already knew that with MYSLF Absolu. Like as far as versatility, compliment factor, all that stuff, it's one of the best things you can get. But Hawas Thunder, hanging right there with it. In the air, this stuff is magnetic, both of them. Both of these fragrances are the types that as you move around and people catch a whiff or you catch a whiff, you can't help but just love the way it comes across. They're both just like the apex predators of the modern, clean, sexy scent profile. And while the DNA here in Rasasi Hawas Thunder is really similar to MYSLF Absolu, it still is, even through the mid, a little more rough around the edges, you know, slightly more rugged, a little more of that aromatic lean to it, whereas MYSLF Absolu is trying to be the more refined fragrance of the two, a little bit more buttoned up, that soft, clean orange blossom, remnants of the citrus from the opening, hints of fresh spice and stripped back modern woods with just the faintest waft of patchouli coming through. That's what this has. And really, that woody patchouli that MYSLF Absolu has, it goes almost unrecognized sometimes. Like when you're wearing this, you don't even really think of it as patchouli, but it's like this hidden MVP that just gives a little extra depth, a little very faint dark edge to the scent as you hit that dry down. And it really helps add this nice counterpoint to the orange blossom and the fresh sweet spice and the citrus. Because all of that is airy, lively, zingy, but then you have that bit of woodiness that just anchors everything. Hawas Thunder has the same overall general shape into the mid and the dry down, and it's impressively close at times, but it doesn't hit quite that same level of the blend. Is that ultimately important? Not really, unless you're doing a close-up side by side, but there is that slight difference. Now into the dry down, the far dry down, they get very close. And this is where Hawas Thunder lets everybody know that it understood the assignment. Sure, you still have that slight extra touch of faint sweetness that comes through with MYSLF Absolu. To me, side by side, opening into dry down, this one is ever so slightly sweeter, though again, into the dry down, this one pumps up the sweetness compared to the opening and gets pretty close to MYSLF Absolu through the mid and the dry down. The main true difference in the dry down between these two though is going to be that little aromatic edge that Hawas Thunder carries. So it's there in the opening, the mid, the dry down, you can pick it up all the way through, whereas MYSLF Absolu, slightly silkier, almost, the way that it hits your nose. The woods in Hawas Thunder, by comparison, a little bit drier, the way that they hit your nose. Maybe faintly at times, like a little touch of a papery woodiness as well in Hawas Thunder. But honestly, into the dry down, they're pretty close. The biggest difference between these two, obviously gonna be the opening. In the opening, it's really easy to tell which one is which. Which one is the Rasasi, which one is the Yves Saint Laurent. As they hit the mid, you can still tell which is which, but they get closer together, and then in the far dry down, closer together still yet. Big positive though, Hawas Thunder does not fall apart. It's not one of those fragrance dupes where you smell it in the opening and it smells like it's really got something cooking, and then it just kind of falls into generic mush as it dries down. Or alternatively, you know, fragrances that smell like trash off the top. You spray it on and it's like spraying on dumpster water. And then as it dries down, it actually gets pretty good. Thankfully, this one is pretty much locked in, opening to dry down. And the performance is solid. Now, it's not some of the best Hawas fragrances as far as like that type of performance, because you know, there are some Hawas releases that are just monsters. Opening to dry down, just beasts. This is not that. In terms of longevity, the Rasasi is right there with the YSL, which, to be fair, the YSL for me is actually really good as far as longevity goes. Now, in terms of projection, the Rasasi is better than the YSL, especially off the top, but not so much that this just swallows up MYSLF Absolu. You know, there's some dupes where you spray the dupe over here, you spray the original over here, and it just absolutely annihilates. That's not what happens. Sure, the Rasasi has a little more push to it, but it's just not that kind of push where it's, you know, night and day, right? So really solid performance, nothing to complain about, but not as strong as some of the crazy Hawas fragrances, for whatever that's worth. In terms of when you would wear it, same time you'd wear this, which basically means literally whenever you want. Spring, summer, fall, winter, day, night, doesn't really matter. Probably leans a little more daytime use, spring, summer, early fall, but realistically, who cares? Wear it whenever you want. I mentioned this before, but I gotta bring it up again. The pricing, this right now, $80, it is a hard freaking pass at 80 bucks. Look, I'm a Momo with a YouTube channel, right? So that's the only reason I bought it. I don't think any of you out there should buy this for $80. I don't think it's worth $80, period. Hard stop. It's just, it's not worth it. And in my view, it's firmly the Oud store, since they're the first ones that have it, price gouging for people who don't want to wait. So if you want to pay the tax for that, you know, if you want to get it for $80, basically pay almost double what it should be, then, you know, knock yourself out. But I think nobody should do that. It's not worth 80 bucks, period. Realistically, newer Hawas fragrances sell for $45-ish, maybe up to 50 if we're pushing it a little bit, but newer ones are right around 45. You can find some newer ones at like 40-ish. I think that's a more realistic price point. 40, I think is kind of the sweet spot. If it's below that, great. But you know, once you start getting above 45, pretty iffy at that point. Because there is Dumont Nitro Elixir, which is roughly 45, and it's also inspired by this. And it has a little bit of a different style to it compared to the Hawas here. So Nitro Elixir, it's gonna have a little more sweetness to it. So it's gonna have a little more of like a bubblegum facet, not as much of the fresh ginger. So it's kind of like with the twist. Honestly, both of these are basically MYSLF Absolu with the twist, but this one takes it more that direction compared to this one, which is a little more of, like I've told you guys, a little aromatic, some soapiness, stuff like that going on. I don't think either of these clearly destroys the other as far as the quality goes, as far as performance goes. Actually, the Nitro, I think, might have the edge as far as just raw performance goes against this one. But as far as which one of these is better, it really just comes down to what you want. They're both really well done. It's just they're kind of taking this and pushing it this direction or that direction. So it's like, well, which one of those directions is more appealing to you? You know, whichever it is going to be dependent on which of these works better for you. That kind of went around in circles, but you know what I'm saying. This is gonna be the cleaner version. This is gonna be the sweeter version. All right, so all of that said, what is the verdict? Well, the first thing is, Rasasi needs to chill on the Hawas. They're dropping like one Hawas per month at this point. It's kind of crazy. I really feel like Rasasi, with the name and undoubtedly the money and everything else that they could throw behind fragrances, could come up with some new lines, some new interesting styles, you know, fragrances that kind of push the boundary a little bit, some new hybrids, some new originals, new whatever, but they seem hell-bent on just doing nothing but Hawas. So that's the first thing. At this point, Rasasi has basically just become the Hawas company. And I'll be straight up, that made me lead with some skepticism coming in with this one, because some of those more recent Hawas fragrances have frankly kind of sucked, but this one is actually good. Like, very good. To be fair, I'm a fan of MYSLF Absolu, but this stuff is fantastic. Year-round usability, good performance, big compliment factor, the whole 9 yards. Taps into this DNA really well, and it doesn't do the exact same thing that this one already did. Because if it did, this would be completely redundant and pointless. So the pros and the cons first. The pros, even though I've mentioned all the differences, it still does smell very close to MYSLF Absolu, which is an absolute stunner. The second pro, excellent scent trail and strong mass appeal. The third pro, stronger than the original, so you get a little extra performance. It's one of the best Hawas releases recently, also has all-season versatility, and the soapier, greener aromatic twist does give it its own identity. Now the cons. First, that freaking price. It is way overpriced at $80. Wait for it to go at least half that amount. The next con, if you want to call it a con, it's not as strong as a lot of the other Hawas releases. So if you're expecting it to just bust down doors with its projection, you may be a little disappointed. The next con, Rasasi is overworking that Hawas line name badly, but at least here it worked out okay. And the last con is not necessarily a really big con, but if you're looking for something more leaning into the sweet side of things, you know, fresh plus sweet put together, this would probably work a little better for you than this. They're not the last ones to the party this time. You know, they're not the last brand trying to come out with a fragrance that smells similar to this one, but they're not the first one either. All right, guys, that'll do it for me, Rasasi Hawas Thunder. I wanna thank you for hanging with me. I have the other ones as well, Exotic and Lava Gold, so I'll come out with reviews on those soon. I'm wearing them currently. Stay safe out there, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.